Through the millennia, man has tried to see the future. And he has developed tools and ways to create divination. And that is what we're talking about today. On this episode of NextGEN Medium, the podcast, the tools we use that connect to the divine. In my history of divination, which I had a brief interest in divination when I was younger, but really haven't explored it too much now that I've kind of transitioned to a different consciousness, a new way of understanding this world through a spiritual awakening I had a few years ago, and starting to explore my soul abilities and soul senses. But that doesn't mean divination isn't a useful tool. So today we're going to look into the world of divination, broad look at the kinds of divination, what divination is, the methods of divination there are, how it's used to give you direction with your psychic, intuitive, mediumship abilities. And that's this episode on NextGEN Medium, the podcast. Hey, I'm Sarah, and like I said, I had a spiritual awakening a couple years ago that led to me uncovering my soul abilities and soul senses. And since then, I've been on a mission to make other people aware that I don't think this is an exclusive thing. I think everybody has these abilities. And with that, I want to impart, first of all, that that's a thing, that we need to get over this only special people have it, or that it's not real, because from my perspective, it is real. And that means something. Also, to help people get to that place of uncovering it, of seeing it for themselves, so they can cross that threshold to start living their true purpose. It really changes how you see this world and how you live in this world, and it's quite extraordinary. And so I want to touch on divination because I come across this with soul abilities stuff, and I don't use it myself. However, that doesn't mean that other people don't. And I think in some cases, I've come across people who have used divination, had a curiosity in divination that actually led to them uncovering their soul abilities. So in saying that, I think it's important to talk about it because apparently it's helped people see this world for themselves with these tools. Let's get things going and talk about what divination is. I like to include the definitions from reputable sources because I think in our world of logic, we like to have that. You know what I mean? One thing that's really hard to capture in this soul abilities, soul world, is common language, even words that explain what's happening, how it happens. If there's a chance that I can add a definition that's something we can all share from our common language, our common understanding, societal understanding, then I got to do what I got to do. So, according to Britannica.com, divination is the practice of determining the hidden significance of cause of events, sometimes foretelling the future by various natural, psychological, and other techniques. So originally, when I first put the podcast out, I had this as part of my series, and that's why this is coming right after that whole series, kind of the wrap up. I went back and I decided to have it as its own standalone subject and not include it in the series, but revisiting this topic at a later time, I realized that divination does serve the same purpose as other soul ability types, but it utilizes tools such as cards, runes, and tea leaves. It is a way of allowing spirit to intervene, spirit, the divine, God, or whatever you want to call it, the gods, to intervene more directly with a reading. It is through the hints that the cards or the runes or the tea leaves give that the psychic intuitive medium can then focus on the message more closely using their soul ability skills. And I can see divination being a true benefit, being guided by spirit, just given a compass and pointed in a direction. There can be a lot to step into, and this would be a way to clear the noise and choose a frequency, give you direction. So consider this episode as a basic overview of divination, just giving the information, but not necessarily how to use divination, because we are just learning the things right now. So let's talk about the different ways that divination is used, the different objects, the different methods, and open up our world of possibility. I went to Wikipedia and saw this huge, ridiculous, intimidating list of divination methods. Now, I'm not going to be sitting here for 2 hours rolling off everything that was on that Wikipedia list, but I did pick a few things because I think there's some more popular ones that we've heard of, maybe some that you didn't quite know is a part of divination. Part of this series is just dabbing our toe in the water to see what exactly exists and to develop the context of all this stuff. So there are many different methods of divination, and it crosses cultures and history and methodology and understanding. So I did go to Wikipedia, huge, large, ridiculous list, and it includes being able to read the meaning of dust, the meaning of cards, electricity, sharp objects, flour, placentas, and roosters, just to name a few. But I wanted to point out more popular divination methods to be aware of, and that will feature here. And let's just roll through the list here. Okay, first we got dowsing. It's a method of searching for unseen elements in the ground. Now, I've heard of dowsing for finding water. You can recall that people will have like a Y-shaped stick, or some people use like metal dowels. But either way, it points at the ground and the person walks around and is able, in some cases, some people are able to find elements using dowels or rods. And this is called dowsing. Next is astrology. I love astrology. I think it's so interesting. I've always been interested in astrology. Never really got to the point of feeling like I had a real grasp on astrology, but is also included in methods of divination. It's the study of positions of celestial bodies, and it determines events and personalities of an individual. And I've come across a couple of people who have used the information that would be needed for, say, a birth chart. A birth chart is read using where celestial bodies are on the day, the time, and the location that you are born. And that specific information I've actually given to a couple people, people that I trust. And I've actually gotten information from somebody that read my life chart, my soul energy chart or something like that. And it was pretty cool. And I also gave it to a medical intuitive who was also doing like a life reading and imparted some pretty interesting information from these 3 bits of information that I provided. Also included in methods of divination, I'm just going to roll through these. Cartomancy, divination method using cards such as tarot cards. I have a deck of tarot cards. I have really yet to use them in my practice, but I know plenty of psychic mediums who use tarot cards. I've gone to a tarot card reader, a couple of them, and always intrigued by what they find. I actually went to a tarot reader after my awakening, and she lives in my area, and I was like, you know what? Now that I have a perspective on this stuff, I'm curious to see how this all goes down, and I want to observe how she does what she does, and does it resonate with me? And she had some great stuff in there, and I really do think she was connecting with spirit, so I am never going to discredit divination altogether, no matter what method, because I've witnessed and I've resonated. Is it 100% my truth? Not necessarily. I think I have to experience that in order for it to be my truth. But I definitely see how tarot cards could be a very effective method of divination. Ouija board. Oh boy, a board that contains each letter of the alphabet as well as yes and no, used as a tool to communicate with spirits, utilizing question asking and a planchette. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but Ouija board, we know that's ways that people connect with the dead, and we all know somebody who's had a freak out story about Ouija boards. I am all set with Ouija boards. I think the creep factor is a bit much for me. Also included in methods of divination, tea leaves. Using loose leaf tea, the sitter drinks the tea, and what is left is then interpreted by the reader based on the leaves' positioning in the cup. Palmistry, also called chiromancy, analyzing the lines of the hand, lines representing different aspects or events of the person throughout their lives, as well as hands representing, quote, the past and, quote, the present and future. So from my understanding, the left hand is the past, your left, and then your right hand represents your present and your future. Bibliomancy, divination by interpreting a random passage chosen from a book, most likely the Bible. I Ching, claromancy, using the ancient Chinese book I Ching or Book of Changes, arranging 6-line figures that require the knowledge from the book to interpret its foretellable meaning. Numerology, many methods of using numbers to explain or predict events or even personalities. And the last one I have is scrying, general method for looking at something with intention or revelation. There are many scrying methods, including staring into crystal balls, water, and candle flames, just to name a few. Scrying, I can actually see this as a way to focus the mind, to use the imagination to allow opening up. And I think this is actually not necessarily like divination, like reading a card or reading a passage from a book. I think this is actually a way that people can focus inward by kind of staring into something. And that could maybe give you a clue as to how to get to that place of information. When it comes to my experience with divination, I have to admit, since my own spiritual awakening and uncovering of my new truth and understanding that I do possess psychic, intuitive, and mediumship abilities, that I have been so enamored with growing into my skills that I really haven't ventured into the divination world. That does not mean I'm not going to. It's just not where I'm at right now. But when I was younger, I was gifted a book about divination. I was about 12 or 13. And this gift is one of the most memorable to me because of who gave the book to me, but also by the breadth of ways to do extraordinary things relating to telling someone's personality by not having to talk to them or knowing what was coming in the future. I think also at that time, I was trying to figure out who I was. So if there was ways that I could read my palm, or locate the bumps on my head and have a chart in front of me and figure out what that means, or even astrology stuff, I think that made me feel like I understood myself a little bit better, but I never really totally took hold in the divination world. Either way, I never got too much into divination other than owning a tarot deck, and I still have it. But revisiting this subject, I can certainly see from my own experience how divination can serve as a useful tool. Is it what gives you the information? No. It is a way to focus the mind, focus attention, in order to use your abilities. That's how I see it. Now, I have some tips for you in helping to find the right divination method for you. And what's interesting about this is I think we are drawn to certain physical senses that I think tell a lot about what our psychic soul senses are that are really strong. And I think if we start our journey being naturally gravitated to these senses that already interest us, already intrigue us, already feel like we have a leg up on, then I think there's a lot you can do to get your journey going in finding and exploring this place and seeing it for yourself by using your stronger abilities. Will they always be your stronger abilities? I don't know. I think for the most part, if you can just get your foot in the door, then you can really start exploring and exercising the abilities that might not be so great, that you might not understand quite yet. But I think there's always time to expand. But first, you got to see this stuff for yourself and start to see its truth. And once you're able to see its truth and sort of submit to this illogical world, I think that's when you can uncover all the stuff. You know what I mean? But going through the long list of mancies, brontomancy, lithomancy, libanomancy, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I can't help but think, where do I start? Well, I think I can help you with this and do so in a way that points you towards the divination method that may fit you well. Just as we naturally have learning styles that work well for us when identified, so too are clairs, which are names for our individual psychic soul senses, how we take in this invisible soul energy world. There are many different ways in sensing the psychic soul energy world. Putting it that way, I think we tap into a physical sense that triggers your attention that can translate to the psychic or soul senses. Let's think of it this way. Do you consider yourself a visual learner? Do you like art? Do you get excited by colors? This is me. I'm talking about myself. But I would say I would point you in the direction of scrying, tarot cards. These possess using your visual senses that could heavily relate to an inclination in your psychic soul senses. More specifically, your clairvoyance. The key when looking into what divination method works well for you is experimentation. I would also mention if there is one divination method that really piques your interest, the fact that you might be a little excited about it should be a tap on the shoulder to try it out. Sometimes I just gotta put the obvious stuff out there just to cover all of my bases. But let's go through this little chart I put together that I have on my blog, like an infograph, if you will. So this little infograph I put together, it says, what divination type is right for you? And it says, use your own learning type to see what divination method could be best with your psychic and intuitive skills. So in school, you may have been tested to see what kind of learner you are. And this might be a good way to kind of bypass some of the translations when it comes to what your physical senses are, how it relates to a psychic or soul sense, what does that mean, and what divination type is for you. So I'm kind of bypassing a couple steps in here, but know that there are a couple steps that I'm excluding in order just to simplify things. So in my visual column, I have lithomancy, which is divination using stones. I also have tarot cards in there. I put astrology too, but I can see how astrology could link to another category that I have. But this is under the visual section. If you are a visual learner, I'm a visual learner. I like to see how it all fits together in a picture. And with that, that is a hint of my clairvoyance, my strength in my clairvoyance. And I think that would be relating to finding success, finding results, easier results, using lithomancy or astrology or tarot cards. If you are a learner that learns well from listening, brontomancy, that's a cool word. That is divination of thunder. And then cladinism is sounds. Divination of sounds and words timing. I think that's an interesting one. If you are a verbal or a written learner, graphology and geomancy, ground markings. Graphology. I was into graphology for quite a while, and I still am super intrigued by it. And I think there's a lot of truth in it, but at the same time, I'm still kind of skeptical of it. Next up is physical. If you are the kind of person you got to touch things to really get a feel for understanding, then I would suggest dowsing or divining rods, pendulums, and libanomancy, which is incense smoke, watching the incense smoke and interpreting that. I put another category of logical, which I think has more to do with a process, formulation, and charting. If you're that kind of person, then I think numerology would be a good divination for you, dream interpretation, and birth charting. And then last up is social. If you got to have another person to work off of, if the human body is something of interest to you, then I would go towards phrenology, which is the bumps on the head. Also palmistry, reading the lines on your hands, and oculomancy, which is reading personality, reading a person's eye. That could get kind of uncomfortable. So those are my tips for you in trying to find the right divination method for you. I would say don't get too crazy with this. I would say take a look at the wiki list, write down a couple. What really intrigues you? I'm a big believer that when you're excited about something, that's your higher self saying, please do that, please do this. So don't ever dismiss being excited about something, because that could be a flag that this is the direction to go. This is the thing to do. On my blog post for the introduction to divination, you can find at my website, nextgenmedium.com/blog. I have all this information written out. I also have web resources for more on divination, including social media resources, lots of Facebook groups, lots of Reddit groups, also some video resources for divination, lots of different people doing lots of different kinds of divination. I have scrying with crystal balls, palmistry, tarot reading, tea leaf reading, astrology for beginners, dowsing, really intriguing stuff. You could spend quite a bit of time just looking at these videos. I also included my source as well. And that does it for this episode of NextGen Medium, the podcast. Go to my website to check out the blog post dedicated to this episode called Introduction to Divination. While you're there, you can book an appointment. We can do a reading where I probably won't be using divination. Or if you are on this journey yourself, there's also a development session that you could sign up for. And you could also sign up for both. A session specific for those who are developing but also want a reading. Book that at my website, nextgenmedium.com. And if you have any questions about these sessions, I do have an FAQ page that you can take a look at. And I'm pretty sure your question, if you have one, will be there and addressed. Check out the blog, vlog, and other podcast episodes at nextgenmedium.com. You can add your name to get emails about upcoming NextGen Medium stuff, like educational opportunities, contests for free readings, and a lot more. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest for all your social media liking needs. Oh, YouTube. I'm definitely on YouTube. Oh, subscribe, please, on YouTube. And until next time, have a pleasant rest of your day. Be safe. And I'll chat with you later. See ya.